Welcome to Behind the Curtain, Nashville's movers, shakers,
and tastemakers.
Brought to you by Chord Real Estate, your key to the heart of Nashville. I'm Steve Luther alongside my co-host Van Hoy.
Here we peel back the layers of Nashville's vibrant scene, sitting down with the innovators, creators, and leaders who shape our city. From music to business and everything in between, we dive into the journeys that have brought them to where they are today.
We're here to uncover the stories behind the success, the passion driving their pursuits, and why they've chosen Nashville as their stage. It's about the people who dream big, push boundaries, and make this city truly unique.
So join us as we explore the heart and soul of Nashville through the eyes of those who know it best.
Well, welcome to the show. Today, we're excited to feature Kevin McCarty, a music tech entrepreneur and the innovative force behind We Should Write Sometime, a groundbreaking app that revolutionizes how songwriters connect and collaborate. With a background deeply rooted in sales management and organizational effectiveness, Kevin has combined his passion for music with his expertise in technology to empower songwriters to spend more time doing what they love most, writing songs. Featured in major publications like Rolling Stone, Billboard, and Forbes, Kevin's vision for WSWS is reshaping the music industry landscape, making it easier than ever for creatives to find their perfect songwriting partners. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm going to need you to send me that.
Yeah,
That's good.
it's good.
It's very good. It's better than what I say. So
That's what people always say. They're like, wow, is that
really
me?
good. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, tell us about your journey. How'd all this get started?
The fun journey is I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, moved here about 9 years ago to combine the things I love most, which is music and tech. A little bit more background is I grew up, again, in Cincinnati. I always played sports. And when I went to college and, through high school, I was playing guitar and playing music and fun cover band stuff. And so my path to college was like, do you go play sports or just kind of go get, like a small D2 school, or do you go pursue a good education and, that world and get a good business degree? And I was like, that's probably a better idea for my future. And so I went to Miami of Ohio, about 45 minutes northwest of Cincinnati. And so there I roomed with my buddy, John Jeanette, who I grew up with, that was a phenomenal keyboard player and singer. And it was funny growing up friends with him. We would all kind of joke and be like, dude, we're going to play football. And he was going to piano and singing lessons. And then we got to college and I was like, I should have been going to guitar lessons and singing lessons. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We get to college and so he and I roomed together. He played keys, I played guitar. He's a phenomenal singer. And so we started writing very interesting John Mayer knockoff vibe songs, just because that was the jam back in the day, was those type of songs. And so as we started playing together, we started building a fun band that kind of helped pay our way through school a little bit, just playing fun cover songs, a lot of the things that you would hear on Broadway, and
Sure,
anything from Whitesnake to Mr. Jones and all the fun stuff in between. And it was a blast. I loved it. And I did that all through college and then post-college for a little bit. And I realized, look, I'm not going to make a career out of this. Like, I also wanted to be a professional golfer, and I realized I'm not good enough, and that's okay. So went into the business world, and, that was something obviously, Dad, I went to college not to just play music and have fun. Sure. It was to do something real with the time. I got a degree at school. And so just went into the business field and then bounced around a little bit there, found myself in like a smaller education technology company, kind of a SaaS company selling software to colleges and universities. It's amazing how similar the education space is and the music industry is, just in terms of the way they operate and function and those type of things that we can definitely dive into. And it was a good job. It paid the bills, did well, traveled a lot. And then I was like, look, I love music. My older brother lives in Thompson Station, just a little bit south of Nashville. And anytime I'd come here with friends or to visit him, and I'd see the, Broadway bars,
good vibe,
it's just like,
good vibe.
I gotta be here.
Yeah.
I gotta figure it out. And knew nothing about the industry itself.
Right.
it was just, I loved playing. I loved being in front of people. I loved writing songs. I just got to get to Nashville. And so it took, a good 9-10 years after college to get an opportunity from a good buddy of mine that had been in the music industry for a long time. And he knew I was itching to get down here. And he said, look, I have this opportunity for this kind of music tech company that's based in South America, but they have no footprint in the US. Could you come here? And like, here's an opportunity for them to say, you guys can take the US and run it. And paid $0.
Right.
It was all a side hustle. And I was like,
that's Nashville, baby.
That's Nashville. Yeah. And so, I told my real job, I'm going to move to Nashville. And, it's enough time has passed that I think the statute of limitations of like, if I was supposed to be working on side hustle stuff when I had a real job, who cares? But anyway, it was a really interesting concept that really for the first 8 months was just throwing everything the music industry had at me. And it was a good learning lesson, and it was brilliant on paper what it was doing, but the execution of implementing what the service was inside the infrastructure of the current music industry was where we got punched in the face pretty quickly. It was, this sounds like a good idea, but trying to make it happen within the current music industry it was basically stepping on everybody's job around an artist.
Right.
And so, I was like, well, that was a good learning lesson. And that's kind of how I made my way to Nashville. So I'll stop there for a second before I get into the other stuff.
Are you saying people were closed-minded to being stepped on and pushed out?
I think it was, here's cool new tech that's going to streamline and make you more money. And then the only thing they thought was, that's my job.
Like Napster.
Kind of.
Well, Spotify. I mean, Spotify's story is, they finally found one person willing to give it a shot, and that's kind of how it started. But it was an uphill battle for sure.
Yeah, and there's some platforms now out that are trying to do what that was doing 9-10 years ago. In short, it was basically like, how do you as an artist or musician set up your touring schedule? And it was, hey, we're going to play these 10 cities. We're going to market to them. We're going to promote it. What this was doing was kind of reverse engineering it a little bit and saying, why don't you find out where your fans are first and go to them? And so it was utilizing social media, posting, hey, if you want me to come play a show there, just click this button. And then you collect that information and the data. And then you basically crowdsource shows. And so if we sell 200 tickets at $20 a pop in the city, we'll come play a show. And you're like, oh, this makes all the sense in the world. Then you have a baseline of revenue and you're not needing to worry.
Built-in crowd. Yeah.
So as you can imagine, as you pitch this, the social media person's like, well, that's part of my job. Tour manager, the booking agent, like all these people have some say in that process. And it was met with a ton of just pushback. And we went back to the parent company and said, look, unless you're willing to drop millions to make this an agency model, like I'm sitting in real work meetings, like texting the social media person for an artist, being like, you need to send out that tweet now. And they're like, well, we're pushing the new single or what. And so, it was just one of those, it wasn't scalable, but it was a good learning lesson. And during that time, I had a real good friend that grew up with he's been here for 25, 30 years and grew up with a lot of the writers and artists that are big now, but weren't big then. And he's not in music, but he was just around them all the time. They'd go to Tin Roof every night. And he became real close with them. And, an EP would drop and he'd ask them, he'd be like, hey, where was that one song? I loved that one song. Why didn't that make the EP? And they'd go, oh, it's just collecting dust somewhere on a shelf. Right. And he was like, well, great. I'm going to start a podcast called Nashville Hits Collecting Dust. His name's Donald Jenkins. He's great. And he was like, I want to interview, all of my friends that had all these great hits that are just collecting dust, but not talk about like, hey, how'd you write that story? It's like, what's your journey? Like, how'd you get from, to Nashville to, what's that kind of like more motivational side of it look like? But at the end, I want you to play a hit that you think's collecting dust that no one's ever heard. So it's kind of like, and he did like 30 episodes, and then I jumped on because I just wanted to be around songwriters and musicians and just listen, kind of be like, the sidekick on the side, like the Jamie to Joe Rogan kind of thing. And so it was interesting because I just got to learn and listen and just hear these songwriters, musicians talk about them coming to town, trying to find their crew to write music with, trying to find people to collaborate with. And I really didn't think anything of it. And so until my co-founder of We Should Write Sometime, Richard Casper, which we can get into, came to me with an idea, and he's got a much better story than I do. But it was just kind of like one of those serendipitous timing things of like what I was pursuing.
Right.
Was trying this music tech thing, side hustle that wasn't working, just putting myself around songwriters and listening to their stories. And then my co-founder coming to me and be like, I think you're my guy for this.
I love it.
Yeah.
Now, did you always have sort of that entrepreneurial, lean to you? 'Cause, you were willing to jump to come for a startup that wasn't really paying anything. So I'm kind of assuming, but it's very different starting your own versus going to work for somebody else.
Yeah. When I thought about it, and I had to kind of go back and go, what was my kind of career journey? And it's fascinating how in entrepreneurship was kind of woven in between some of the first jobs that I had that I didn't even realize until kind of I started my own thing, where my first job was a very, make your family proud that you are a part of a 40,000 person big company,
right.
Suit and tie every day. You got a 401k and healthcare, and this is great. You show up and you work hard, and, you could basically plan out until retirement.
Right.
It was the most boring stuff ever. But it's like, hey, it's a stable job. It pays bills, and people are like, oh, that's great. That's a great company, and it's big, and you can see career path. And I was like, I'm so bored. But what was interesting was at that company, I started in the sales role, which was a newer division, within the bigger company. And so they basically were creating this brand new division. And I started as like the first generation sales rep within that new division, and then morphed that into like them becoming a sales manager. And so like I almost had that, hey, we don't have this thing built out yet, but you have the umbrella of the bigger organization. So you don't have the stress of like, startup stuff. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then I went to the education technology company. And when I started there, it was going to be just for like a normal sales role. And then when we started talking about what we were doing, they were like, hey, we're about to acquire. We need you to come in and build a sales training program. We need you to come in to kind of help onboarding stuff. But we also we just acquired this new company, this new service that helps students beat the GMAT. And we have no playbook. We have no marketing. We have not build it. You run the team. Your goal is to hit this dollar amount by the end of the year. You have these 4 people are yours. Go do it. And so it was like, going from a 40,000 person to an 800 person company, kind of similar roles of just, we don't know how to do this, but go try to figure it out.
Sure.
And I think that's when I started to realize like, I love the building part. And that's when eventually it was, God, what's my other thing I love most, which is music. And so it kind of then, when I got to Nashville, it was just like every night going out to these writer rounds and trying to learn the business. And I was like, this is so screwed up. There's always these stories I tell of, Blue Bar isn't there anymore. I had written a ton of songs and none of them were any good, but, I go to Blue Bar on a Tuesday night and I wish it was still here, but you listen to these writers and these guys and girls get up there and sing and play. And you're like, it blew my socks off. Like I was like, you're incredible. Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But then the next night I'd go to like Tin Roof and I'd see who just was playing the writers round on Tuesday, bartending.
That's right.
At Tin Roof.
That's right.
And I was so confused, right? Like I come from the big, like it's a tech company and then like a bigger company. And I was like, these are the best songwriters I've ever heard.
Yeah.
I was like, why do you have to bartend? Do you like it? Is this your bar? You own the bar. that's why you're working here. You own it. And they're like, no, like this is, I'm a songwriter.
Nashville.
And so I got so like, I think angry of just being like, I want you to just write and sing songs. Like, I just want you to write songs. You're so good at it. And that's kind of my like that why a little bit of just like me writing some songs that people sort of connected with, but then getting in front of the best in the world and being like, if you're the top 0.001% of some industry, like you shouldn't struggle financially, you know? So I just didn't know. I was like naive about how the business works.
Right.
And I always joke, and I was like, I feel like Michael Scott from The Office came up with some of the
how funny,
you know, stuff for the music industry where there's like each song is worth 200%, you know, and you're like, I can just see Michael Scott sitting back and like, you know, where we're going to make songs, not just, we'll make them worth 200%.
That's right.
You know, and so anyway, so that's kind of been my journey to before Richard and I started the app, but it was just kind of that engrossing myself in the Nashville lifestyle and trying to just meet everybody.
That's so good.
You know?
I know when I came here, I had a business degree from the University of Georgia. And when I got into the music business here, I was like, that was the 200% that just blew my mind. Yeah. And I said, I gotta take some more classes. So I enrolled at Belmont. I took every music business class they had. I was like, this makes no sense.
Yeah.
I
mean, it's got a long way to go, and you know, we can talk about, and this is definitely, I don't even like getting on to like pitch the app, but I think it's one of those where there's just a lot of inefficiencies that with simple technology, like can help the songwriter spend more time writing songs versus like, how do I navigate the business? And if someone asked me in Ohio, if you know, are you with BMI or ASCAP?
Right.
I'd be like, what the hell does body mass index have to do with music? I was like, I don't know. Why are you even asking? And I've had friends that moved here to town and would play on Broadway. And I'd ask them, I was like, which performing rights organization are you with? And they're like, still trying to figure that out. I was like, what do you mean? I was like, you've been playing your stuff, you know, like, they're like, I just don't know which one and why and all this stuff. And so it was just like, I just want to help songwriters not have to worry as much about the business admin logistical side of it. And so I always equate it a little bit to, you know, Shopify and how they build a platform to help small business owners run their business. Not, you know, if you make great belts and want to sell belts or something, they're not like, here's how you got to make great belts. It's hey, we're going to help you with the website design and invoicing and all the stuff no one wants to deal with.
Right. Although there are advocates at BMI and NASCAP and ZSEC that will work hard for your
100%. And that's like where
200%.
Yeah, 200%.
They will give 200%. That's right.
And we've had a handful of conversations with most of them, and even with SOCAN and Canada, and just because you know, and the MLC here in town did a great webinar with us because I would so like when you download the app, I'm your first connection, kind of like old school Tom of MySpace.
I like that.
And it gives me like real direct
I still have
feedback.
my MySpace, by the way. I do.
God. Do you know who's in your
and my AOL?
Huh?
Oh yeah.
Who's your top 8?
Ooh, I don't remember. I should look at it. I should reopen it and look.
Yeah. I mean, there's people that pump 30 million into that to revive it. But anyway,
can you still log into MySpace?
Yes, I can.
Oh,
jeez.
I sure can.
I always joked with people, and I was like, they're like, I don't know how to code. And I go, did you ever have a MySpace? And they're like, yeah. I go, did you ever put like songs in a backdrop on there? I'm like, then you know HTML.
Wow.
You're a coder.
Hey, I'm a coder.
You know,
Steve.
you're a coder.
Yeah.
You know, what's the song going to be?
I feel good about myself all of a sudden.
You should. But it's interesting, right? Because like it gives me kind of that direct connection to the users when they log on, and they'll ask me some questions, and it's at this stage
to hear back from you.
A lot of them go, is this a robot? And I was like, well, the first message is, but this is really me. And it's just, you know, it's good user feedback. It's good kind of understanding some of the gaps in the educational part where I'll get, you know, I've got a song for Dolly Parton. How do I get it to Dolly?
Right.
You don't.
Yeah.
There's a process. But it's good.
No unsolicited material.
Right. And what's funny is I respected the lady that reached out, because I said, like, this is kind of how it works, and
Right. Because they don't know.
they don't know. And I said, look, I've never been one to obviously think conventionally. I go, find out who the manager is and just reach out. But like, just see what they say. And she got back to me like 2 weeks later, and she was like, what you said was right, but she did get back to me, and that meant a lot, that she got back to me and said, like, hey, we don't take unsolicited material, or the publisher or the team. I was like,
We
it's worth a shot.
stamped it.
Yeah.
Mail, we would stamp, no, it's listed, send it back.
Yeah.
Because if you opened it and your band came out with a song that had anything similar, you were in for a lawsuit.
Yeah. There's liability.
We had to protect. We were that line of defense.
Yeah.
With our stamp.
Yeah. So, that's kind of been my journey. And I think, if you want, I can get into my co-founder's journey. That's way better than mine, of how we kind of, like, without him, this wouldn't have happened.
Well, he's not here. We're here to talk about you.
You said he came to you with this idea. Expand on that a little bit. I know I came to Van with an idea, but it took me
multiple pitches.
How many years did it take me to
I was like, what are
finally
you talking?
Convince you? Like,
real estate
wasn't crazy.
All I know is music. What are you talking about?
I love a good whiteboard set.
That's it.
And it actually is involved in the story. And
that's why we have whiteboards all over the place around here.
You never know.
It actually goes back to the very beginning.
I love it.
He literally showed up at my house with a whiteboard. I'm sure there are pictures.
Yeah.
There's got to be. Set outside.
Yeah. After this, I'll show you I had one of the interns do like a TikTok of like our old wireframes that we drew versus what it is now. But no, Richard came to me and was like, hey, you might be the guy for this. And so his quick, long backstory is, like, he grew up in a small town outside of Illinois, like graduating class of 22, right? And he went on to the Marine Corps and he guarded, once 9/11 happened, he joined and enlisted to the Marines, and his goal was to go fight for the country.
Right.
He ended up guarding George W. Bush at Camp David for a while.
Wow.
And navigating that space here on the U.S., but he wanted to go fight. And once he got deployed, his Humvee was blown up 4 times within the matter of 3 months. And that left, and he held his best friend that got shot and killed beside him. And and so this was in a very short time span of serving. And so, they just said, hey, you're unfit to serve. And he was left with left traumatic brain injury. And so when he came home, he was dealing with that. And, coming from a small town, like his next step was like, well, I want to, figure out how to deal with this, but I also want to get involved with, the FBI, CIA, some 3-letter agency, and pursue my career. And, and he always says in his talks that if 0 was killing herself and 100 was being totally fine, like he was at a 9. And like, there's a lot of details in this, but the short of it was like, to get into the 3-letter agency, you had to get a degree. And he was like, well, what's an easy degree to get? And he went to a small community college and did like art. And he was like, this way I don't have to talk to anybody. I can just do art and all this stuff. And that unlocked what he's doing now him. Is like, he started doing painting and sculpting and those things. And like, what was coming out of him was him able to tell his story without telling his story. And it's unbelievable, some of the stuff that he produced, and like you wouldn't, he couldn't describe it. Right. It's kind of like, okay, how did you do that? And he's like, I don't know. I just did it.
Sure.
And he was able to kind of start opening, like that was his healing process, was being able to tell a story. So he got into the Art Institute of Chicago.
Wow.
Where George O'Keeffe went, and all these, it's amazing.
He got a 3-letter degree to get in a 3-letter agent.
Exactly.
ART to CIA.
Yeah. And so he was in Chicago, and this is one of those funny kind of like God timing moment things of, I was, so as he's at the Art Institute of Chicago and getting his degree, he's also, he's 6'5", combat Marine. He's got tats. Like, he's the nicest teddy bear, dad joke telling guy.
He stood out.
But he was a bouncer at Joe's on Wheat.
Oh, wow.
Perfect role. what's funny is I played a show at Joe's on Weed when he was a bouncer there, and we didn't even know it. And so we once we figured that out, that was pretty funny. But anyway, as he was a bouncer there was a thing called Nashville in the North or something like that, where they had Mark Irwin and some really great songwriters go up and kind of do a writer's round up there.
Cool.
And Richard had been trying to write this song about his best friend for I think like 2 years.
Wow.
And he just walked up to a couple of the writers and was like, look, I've been trying to write a song about my friend. If I come down to Nashville, will you help me write it? And, a couple of people were like, oh, no, I don't want to, and Mark Irwin was like, absolutely. So his like first co-write was
very cool. Yeah.
And so he came down and they wrote a song in like, hour and a half.
Of course.
That he'd been trying to write for a year and a half. And this was his like, oh my gosh, now I can like give a song to somebody about my friend and I don't have to talk to him, but like, it's like, here's the story I'm trying to tell. And that was his way of dealing with his PTSD and just his therapy. And so, fast forward 10 years now, the organization's called Creative Vets. And so now there's like 2 main programs, but a bunch of little ones, but they fly in combat disabled veterans to write with big songwriters here in Nashville.
Wow. Very cool.
The back of the Grand Ole Opry, Big Machines, their admin partnership. And so like this, if you go, hey, Alexa, play songs for veterans, it's all Creative Vets music. And so, Vince Gill's like lended their voice on some of these songs. And anyway, so like what he has done in for veterans is just kind of create these programs of like sending them to art schools all across the country, fully expense paid, credits and doing the songwriting stuff. And so when we first met, it was within basically a week or 2 of us both moving here at the same time. And the buddy that kind of called me for the side hustle thing was like, hey, you got to meet this other guy I just ran into, I think, at church. And he was starting this new nonprofit to getting writers to write with veterans. And Richard's never drank a drop of alcohol in his life. And I loved going to writers' rounds every night. And he needed to go out every night till 2, 3 a.m. to meet songwriters to be a part of his nonprofit. So I had a DD for a really long time because he would come pick me up and we'd go Whiskey Jam Monday and then like Lisa Rowe Variety Show Tuesday. And like it was amazing. It was like my escapism, but I loved it. And he'd pick me up and we became really, really close. And like through my journey of, the side hustle and the podcast stuff. And just like when he came to me, he said, look, because I met my, wife on Bumble. She likes to say church. We met at church and we met on Bumble.
That's so funny.
And sweetest girl in the world. But he goes, look, like she's got a great job but it's, a corporate job and she's got a 9 to 5. And he goes, look, like I got to go out every night, but I want to spend more time with her. You might be the guy for this because 1, I need to find songwriters to be a part of Creative Vets, but also I need to give a tool to these songwriters that come into the program, a way for them to connect with other songwriters to kind of continue the writing and the healing and the therapy part of it. And I said, man, like what I keep hearing on the podcast and like from talking to songwriters is the challenge that they've had of finding the right co-writers. Songwriting's a lot like dating. Get in a room and you're like, man, I wish I would have known more about you before we spent 3 hours. It's not the right skill set. It's not the right genre. If I could and I was like, I think this is a much bigger problem. And, he had, and just around that time, he went out to LA to do something out there and he ran into a writer that was signed under Universal. And she was like, I'm so jealous of what you guys have in Nashville because you can find writers anywhere. Like if I don't write unless my, publisher sets it up and there's not like the same community. And,
that's right.
And I was like, there's nothing out there that's specifically focused on just connecting songwriters. There's obviously organizations that have parts of it that help connect songwriters. There's apps that help connect musicians. Like, I need a bass player. Well, once you have a bass player, then you kind of don't need the app anymore. And so it was kind of understanding like we're going to be very niche and focused on this and just go, songwriting is a lot like dating. People are familiar with the swiping. it's obviously a problem. And if you're not in Nashville, kind of good luck. Like it's just not a thing. And so we said, let's do it. And I went and got a whiteboard and we started drawing out the wireframes and kind of called a dev buddy of mine to say, hey, look, like we're going to do this thing. Do you want to do it? And he was like, sure. Drafted up the documents and those type of things. And so we started working on it for like 8 months. And every 2 weeks we're like, and we're putting our money in to start. And after 8 months, my buddy that was starting to do all the dev stuff, and I've known him since I was like a kid, and he randomly, he was in Nashville, but we both grew up and went to the same high school in Cincinnati. And he sent me an email and he's like, hey, this is like the hardest email I've ever had to write, but I can't do your app anymore.
Oh, wow.
And, at the time you're like, dude, we've been doing this for 8 months.
Right.
Doing this for 8 months. I look back now and go, love him to death, but thank God that happened, because it forced us to get our stuff together, if you will, of like, okay, there's some naiveness to it of, if there's a bug or if there's something wrong with the app, he's got a full-time job. He's got 2 young kids. He's like, when is he going to do this?
Right.
And how long is that going to take? And so it kind of forced us to get some early angel investors on board, go get a real dev shop, really do it the right way. But along the way, right, it's like we're still talking to every songwriter and be like, what do you think about this? What do you do? And they're like,
Sure.
I mean, yeah, like if it did this, that, and the other. And so we've been just very focused on like, just let's not try to do too much too early. Let's just simply connect them and create this community of songwriters. And organically, we have seen it kind of just grow to this, global community and people just kind of sharing it and talking about it. Like we have obviously big ambitions of what we're doing next, but it's been cool to just kind of see that community just go, look, like we're not trying to charge the songwriter. Like we want to help them. Obviously that's going to take longer on the business side of it, because if people are, how are you going to make money? It's like, we have a whole plan for it. It's just going to take a little bit longer than, hey, get on our app. It's $4.99. I understand how great that would be for a business, and how much less stressful that would be for us. But we've got a long vision about, let's put the songwriter first. Let's build that community so that they have the value or the power to do something and eventually reshape it. And it's funny, like all the charts that, you look up, how is the music industry, structured and what does it look like? And it always starts with that song and then it splits off into the two, and it's like, there's the 200%. And I go, that's correct. Kind of, they're missing a part, which is the line above it. That's the songwriters. You got to get songwriters in a room to write the thing.
Right.
So there's a lot of things predicated on, well, the song's done. It's like, well, let's be at the very tippy top of the funnel and just get everybody in the room together and let's help them going forward so we don't have to go upstream for anything.
Mm-hmm. So you bootstrapped in the beginning, then brought on some angels. Have you had any other funding rounds, or kind of where are you at with that?
Yeah, we early kind of just small checks here and there just to get incorporated. Mm-hmm. And then in 2021, we did like our first official kind of angel round, right? Like small amount just from angels and some high net worth people and some in music, some in tech. And we didn't need or want to kind of go after kind of the venture space, if you will. We learned a lot of lessons in that regard because of just the industry we're in and them understanding songwriting and where it could go and what we're doing. And
sure,
it just didn't fit in the thesis for most, in which I was like, I get it. And so, my whole life is in this. And then right now we're just finishing up kind of like what you could call like a seed round. And we've got more angels involved and some repeat investors. And then there's another, it's not completely done, but they've sent over the term sheet. I'm not even thinking about it and celebrating or doing anything until I can see it in the bank and it's done.
Yeah.
But what's great about it is, their belief in our vision and where we're going. and them saying, look, like we want to provide some resources and services and cash and like help you grow the team. And because it's just me and Richard and some lovely interns from Belmont and Vandy and Lipscomb, and
Gotta love it.
yeah, and you know, they get a real hands-on experience. But
Yeah.
you know, this has kind of been our first official bigger round, and you know, to help expand in new countries, grow the platform, all the new features we want to build out, and then grow the team and all that fun stuff.
Well, what an opportunity for those interns, you know?
Yeah,
huge.
In the interviews, I'm like, this isn't I need coffee. It's
right. It's like
it's you on
doing
TikTok.
It. Yeah.
Go. I was like, I'm not going to dance, but like, you know, if you need me for something,
right,
let me know. But you know, make it, you know, Duolingo-ish type of vibe.
Sure.
Of, you know, just I don't get a lot of it, but keep me cool, keep me hip.
Yeah.
You know, if there's a term that comes out that I need to know, let me know. But yeah, I'm like, you guys need to be hands-on with this whole thing.
That's good.
Yeah.
So has there been a lot of, you know, push from the investors to focus more on how to monetize it versus the artist experience?
Oh, you get pressure from the money people.
You know what? Not really. And I think it's having real conversations. Like most of them are kind of silent and just like, you know, we love this idea. We love you guys.
That's good.
It's doing a thing. It's not so much money where it's like,
right.
you know, like this,
right.
They understand. And what's been really nice is like having investors that have done this before and are kind of hands-on and saying like, how are you going to structure this and grow this team, and what's this look like? And I'm, you know, I've got a lot of tech background, so let's look at the platform, how we're going to grow and scale that. Because on the front end, right, like it's just a simple swiping to connect Tinder for songwriters, but the real juggernaut of this is the back end data and the things that are happening on the back end. If I was to analogize it with real estate, you know, it's kind of like the Zillow, a little bit of like what's going on within that, you know, within the housing market. And similarly, like, you know, we have publishers and labels asking us for access to our, like, who's the most swiped on profiles in Nashville,
Sure.
who's the most swiped on in LA. We're looking for unsigned track guys and girls, you know, and so it becomes this kind of A&R discovery tool. And so as we're growing the front end, you know, user base, like all this data on the back end allows us to then kind of commercialize that for the B2B SaaS side and have these label. And some of these publishers that are the biggest in the world, they're like, we want to white label this. Like we have a problem connecting with our writers.
Right.
And so like, can we just white label this?
I would think.
And so there's a lot of these enterprise opportunities that are coming to us. And so having investors that like have done this are like, okay, great. Like, what is the priority? How much does it cost? Like, what do we got to do to get it to that next kind of milestone is very, very helpful. I mean, I had one investor, I met him only a couple of times and it was just phone calls. And, you know, he was like, I heard about you from one of your current investors. I'm interested. And I was like, well, let's have a couple conversations. And, you know, on the phone, I said, look, like this isn't, you know, a house flip, right? Like we're building a community of songwriters. Like we want to build this to be the biggest songwriting community in the world. And that's going to take some time. And then we'll like really be able to, in the next, you know, 2, 3, 4 years, like we have a plan, obviously, like we have a plan to make good money, but do it in a way that puts songwriters first. But it's going to take a bit. So just, I want to be clear with you, investor, like this isn't something where you're going to get a distribution check in 18 months. And, you know, he asked a question that I thought was interesting that I'd never gotten. And he said, you know, like what % do you put on this succeeding? I thought about it for a second and I was like, I kind of laughed, and cause you know, if he does invest, great. If he doesn't, like, I don't know. I just,
right.
Second conversation. I said, look, and I said, I have no other option. You know, I don't know what % you want to put on that. I got everything I've made from my past jobs is in this bad boy. And so I got no other.
That's good.
Yeah. And
it's 200% going to work.
It's 200.
That's exactly right. 200%.
That's why I don't know what % you want to put on that. But like the option for failure, just for me, isn't going to be there. And I'm not saying that to be like the cheesy entrepreneur guy, but it was the truth to him. And he was sending my check tomorrow.
I love it.
I mean, because I was like, dude, I really don't. I'm not like,
That's
well, if this
right.
doesn't work, I'm like, dude, it's. I mean, my old financial guys are like, you're going to get crushed if you. And I was like, if you pull this money from somewhere. I was like, no, I know. I was like,
Well, and the reality is, this is gonna happen. Might as well be you,
right?
Because it's gonna happen. It's a great concept.
To me, it's a simple way to start fixing a complex problem.
Right.
And it's just swipe. And, as creatives, it's, let's not make them use or do something a way that they're not familiar with. And if it was just, hey, I know how to swipe, I get it. Now I do get some questions of like, maybe and I don't try to be ever ageist or tech ageist or whatever that same equivalency would be, but just if they haven't used a swiping app before, like, okay, great. It's just, you have to double opt in to connect. Like you can't, and that's the whole point is, so you're not writing with people that you both don't want to write with each other.
Right.
And so like, I don't know, when we were doing early research and you'd see how songwriters are connecting and all these groups on these like Craigslist and Facebook, and they're like, I'm looking for a co-writer, and 70 people respond. And it's like, how are you going to get through? Like, I want to do it. It's like, well, do you know, like, then you have to, it's just like an old school way of doing it.
That's right.
Talk about some of the intricacies of that. Is it, do you match based on, experience level or location, or get into all the specifics?
Yeah, it works for those that have ever used a dating app. Just it still uses geolocation, so if you open it up, it'll default to 100 miles around you, and you can change that to 10 miles to 100 miles, 50 miles, whatever. But like it just uses whatever city you're in. But you have the opportunity to just go in and change your location and put your profile in different cities. And so if you're, hey, I'm going to LA in August or in October and want to set up rights in advance, like in the profile, you build it out and there's just kind of like an open text bio field at the top. A lot of people just put in kind of their web page and like, about me, Wikipedia page or something. Just, here's what I'm looking for, style, genre, whatever. Yeah, exactly. Links to their socials, links to their music, songwriting skills, what instruments they play, and kind of their PRO affiliation. And then that way you get a good sense looking at a profile like, oh, this is what they're looking for. Okay, great. Like it says here that they're coming to LA next month and they're trying to set up co-writes in advance. And, that way it just kind of goes, let me click on some of their music and see, is it a right fit? And if you both swipe, then you're connected in the app to then can like communicate and set up a co-write. I mean, it was early on when we would meet people, songwriters at Tin Pan South, the whole Songwriters Festival. And a lot of these writers would say, yeah, I flew down here from Canada just to meet other songwriters.
Very cool.
And I was like, well, when are you going to write with them? They're like, oh no, I'm going to come back. And I was like, wait, so you flew here?
Yeah.
Just to meet other songwriters to then fly back again? And they're like, yeah. I was like, I think you could just pay us like $4.99 a month, like at some point, right? Like not now, it's free now, but like, at some point just save thousands of dollars to just change your location in the app. So yeah, the way the algorithm works, it's not fancy. It's just, if you get on it, whoever was on it last shows up first. So it's not like we don't have some big, TikTok algorithm. It's just, if you want to
manipulating them
it's just, if you get on it, then you'll show up.
Be seen.
Right. And that's the way we want it, is just so it's like, down the road, if we get enough users, it's going to be smart to help facilitate better connections. But like that, it is very expensive and you need a lot of users and you need a lot of data.
Is there like a pro level or
so there's
like that?
There's a pro level that we haven't like officially launched and pushed out to the public. This is fine. Like in the app, it just says request for pro verification, just like any social platform. And you get kind of a blue pick mark, not a check mark. And what that allows you to do is toggle between seeing everybody or just verified professional writers.
Gotcha.
And so it's kind of been a one-to-one organic growth in this for the pro writers, because we are trying to do a couple things. One is like understand the value and why some songwriters sign up for the pro tier, but also like, you know, we want to build like the minor leagues to the major leagues, right? So, okay, how do you go from here to here? And so the pro tier, you know, and it's just me and Richard. So if like we push this out, like, hey, apply to be a pro writer, we're gonna have to go through thousands of applications. And so we just, it's kind of just been one of those, like, if we meet people out and we talk about it and they're like, oh dude, I would love that. And then I was like, great, well, you know, and organizations that we know are pro writer level, we've kind of went to publishing houses that are saying, hey, can you show my songwriters this, because I don't want to deal with them finding new writers.
Right. Do they have to have a recorded cut? Or?
So yeah, it kind of a lengthier application where it's, you know, past publishers, current publishers, you know, notable co-writes, commercial success stuff, because some could be in the sync world.
Sure.
Just kind of like, you know, are you know, verified in other platforms for songwriter, being a songwriter? Some are like, I'm an influencer, you know, like we try to be very exclusive at this stage, you know, and what they have to send a photo ID so to make sure it's them. One of the interesting stories, because I wanted this to start happening, and then I was like, oh my gosh, here's the first one where the application came through and I was like, this can't be real. And because the co-writes and the credits, and we verified it through all the ways to verify him, that he's a writer on there. I mean, it was like a Bieber song and a Post Malone song and a Grande song. And I was like, well, all right. So I emailed him.
Right.
It's like, why do you need this?
Yeah.
Love that you're on here. I appreciate it. Why do you need it? The short of it was, look, I'm a pop writer in LA. I want to do cross-genre stuff, more of it in the Nashville country scene.
It's good.
So I go to my publisher and, hey, who do you got in Nashville? And the publisher's like, oh, let me see. And then they got to come over to people they know in Nashville and then find writers. And so, you know, it's got a whole,
of course,
can go up, go over, go down. And he was like, if I can just get verified and then change my profile from LA to Nashville and start swiping on pro writers. And some of them have huge 90s country songs that like they're trying to get back in it, right? They're trying to find newer writers to go with. And it's like, okay, that's a week's worth of time saved being able to just manage. And so that's kind of been a cool thing, especially when, you know, we open up in the K-pop world. It's like, how do you get in front of that world? And we got a long way to go with a lot of it, but it's just kind of understanding why some of our writers use it. And, you know, like the simple stuff, like what we're building next, of just simply putting in a calendar integration.
Sure.
Okay, great. We connected. When can you write? It's fascinating how many songwriters I go, have you ever heard or used Calendly? And they're like, no. What is that? And you tell them. You're like, you click a button and then a notification pops up, and then it's like on your, like, what? That would be incredible. It's like, I mean, it's already there, man. So it's like those simple things that are inefficient for songwriters to logistically manage their time.
That's right.
I'm like, we can pretty much easily help solve that. So if you don't have to worry about connecting with the right people, you don't have to worry about scheduling as much, then great. I can write more songs. I can write more with the right people. And so
we talked a little bit about this prior on our phone call, but where is the other thing. We used to offer up our third floor as a songwriter suite.
Oh yeah.
Is that kind of on the roadmap for you as well, figuring out the where?
Well, it's funny you say that. There's two opportunities for us to get, like, I guess, physical locations to help in that regard. And one of them was, thank God it didn't happen, because the next month was COVID.
Oh, wow.
And we were like, this would be so great. It'd be an office plus like just a place for songwriters to come. It's definitely for our Nashville location. one of them, but the bigger one was a conversation we had with WeWork. And there was a random fluke connection here in Nashville that kind of got bumped up, and this was before the whole WeWork thing happened.
Right.
They were like, hey, what if, because where songwriters are in the major hubs, LA, New York, Nashville, Austin, Atlanta, like, is there a partnership of, hey, connect on the app and then go right into WeWork? I was like, yeah, we can easily do that. And then like 3 weeks later, they're like, all this stuff came out about WeWork, and I was like, yeah, let's. But it makes a lot of sense, right? Like, I think that's the power of, at this stage, right? Like, understanding the value of the data that comes in and go like, okay, great, this makes a ton of sense for us to partner with some people and or set up but that then spiderwebs into a lot of other challenges. And we look at Amazon, right? Their business model, and it's, what is the value to the user of 2-hour delivery versus the cost, and it's like, yeah, they're crushing on AWS fees, right? That's wildly profitable. They're not making money off of 2-hour delivery, but it's great for the user, right? And so like we've kind of managed both sides of that at an early stage of, that sounds great, but then all of our money is into leasing offices and doing that. We're like, let's worry about that down the road. We got to stay alive here and continue growing.
Are there concerns or discussions around maintaining the artist privacy versus being able to provide some of that data to?
Yeah. What's interesting is, at this stage, right? Like, we don't sell any data. It's just, but creating that network effect is really important, not only for our platform, but also for our user base, of where now that we know that there's opportunities of publishers and labels looking for up and coming talent, it's an opt-in, right? Like, hey, I'm trying to make it to the major leagues of baseball. Like, I want to be, how do I get to single A and then double A and triple A and move up? Sure. Some just want to play backyard baseball, and it's like, just hang out with friends and do your thing.
Right.
But if those that are trying to take it seriously, and it's like, great, here's how you can get in front of the right people to help grow your career. Just kind of like that, the story I always talk about, when the girl got a pub deal from being on the app, and she was in Atlanta. And so like, it was just connecting the right people and us being able to facilitate the platform to, put some gasoline on that on a consistent basis to just help promote those songwriters. And I mean, the data is, here's their socials and streams, like, it's not anything too personal. It's, they play guitar, right? And so like, obviously at some point the advertisement comes in play, of like, here, okay, Guitar Center, you're going to be in front of the thousands of guitar players within 10 miles of you.
Sure.
That makes a lot of sense. But from the like personal data stuff, like the vision part of this is where it's going to take some time, but it's like, I get frustrated when I know songwriters that are writing to be pure songwriters for artists. They're like, look, I don't want to be the artist. Like, I just want to get in a room and write great songs for great people. And they're frustrated because they go, the only way I am told that I can make it is go blow up on TikTok. And that opens up a whole thing. But and it's like, well, it doesn't sit really right with me. And again, like, if you're an artist trying to get fans, like, in
of course,
that, use whatever tools you got to do. But there's a lot of songwriters that are like, instead of getting in a room and writing this afternoon, it's my content day. And do you like that? No, hate that. And I was like, great. Like, that means there's an opportunity for us to, within like, okay, who's writing the most songs, who's getting swiped on the most, who are like, all of that stuff of how do we promote them? And so it's not about their socials and streams anymore. It's about their songwriting. A lot of logistics need to go into that, but that's kind of that thing of there's an opportunity there. And so the data part of it, of like, hey, here's my profile. Oh man, they're like, how do I get in front of these people that can help advance and grow my career? So yeah, there would be, the short answer is an opt-in of, do you want to be pushed in front of publishers, labels, etc.
Right.
The other thing I didn't realize, and this was a conversation with somebody that was in the banking world that manages a lot of artists and songwriters, they help them out on the financial services side. And they're like, no, like we pay a lot of money to try to find up and coming writers before anybody else. And I didn't even know, I had no idea. And she was like, oh no, think about it. Everybody that's the circle of an artist or songwriter wants to find,
that's right.
The next, Oliver Anthony guy, like how do we find him before anybody else?
Mm-hmm.
There's, managers and, like publicists and all the people. And they're like, no, it's not just publishers and labels.
Right.
So yeah, it's fascinating.
Well, for artists that are interested in finding this app, where do they go? Is there a website?
We should write
go right to the app stores.
Yeah. We should write sometime.com. It's basically a landing page that sends you right to the app store. I actually joked with an intern on here before I came over here because she was like, hey, have you guys thought about updating your website a bunch? And I was like, well, of course. I go, but let me ask you this, and not to be presumptive, but have you ever been to Tinder or Bumble's website? She was like, no. I was like, right. I was like, we want to get them on the app, right? And so It's eventually when we have kind of more of the B2B stuff, I was like, it literally is the simplest concept. Just get them. We should write sometime.com, links to the app store and Google Play, and it's free. Download it.
Rock and roll.
Yeah.
Well, Kevin, it's been a pleasure.
Yes, it has.
Thank you. It's been great.
We look forward to hearing all the successes and all the amazing songs that come out of this platform in the future.
I think he fully fulfills the name of our podcast.
Yeah.
Behind the Scenes.
Wow.
Nashville's movers, shakers, and taste makers.
Except it's behind the curtain.
Oh, I get it wrong every time.
Every time.
I don't even do it on purpose.
I love it. That's great.
Well, thanks for coming out.
Thank you for having me.
And with that, we will see you guys next time. Well, that's a wrap on today's episode of Behind the Curtain, Nashville's Movers, Shakers,
and Taste Makers.
We hope you've been inspired by the stories of passion, perseverance, and innovation right here in Nashville.
A big thank you to our guests for sharing their journeys and to you, our listeners, for joining us. And of course, our gratitude to Chord Real Estate for making this conversation possible.
Don't forget to follow or subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform.
Thank us.
Yes, you did.
Oh, I guess I did. Well, thank us. Okay.
Like I was saying.
Oh, yeah.
Don't forget to follow or subscribe on your favorite platform to catch every episode and hit that notification bell. We've got plenty more fascinating guests lined up, ready to share their insights and inspirations.
And we love hearing from you, so reach out to us with your thoughts, questions, or suggestions for who you'd like to hear from next.
Until next time, keep chasing your dreams and making your mark in Nashville.
Oh, my goodness.
Remember,
I'm talking to Casey
it's
Kasem.
the people behind the scenes that make the city shine.
I love it. Take care. See you behind the curtain.